When I was a kid, we had a Super Nintendo, but we actually owned very few games for it. This wasn't a rare occurrence, mind you. Games were expensive back then. Oh, how the times have changed. And lots of kids would only get new ones on rare occasions. We really didn't have any measure of quality those days either, so it was a crapshoot whether your one game would be any good. But there existed a magical place where you could pay a fraction of the price to rent games for short stints of time, playing them to your heart's content.
Wow.
At least until you had to bring them back, lest you incur the dreaded late fee.
It's the mature thing to do.
Because of rental stores, kids everywhere were able to experience so many new games, if but for brief windows of time. And I was one such kid. Every Friday after school, my dad would drive my brother and I to the rental store, and the weekend would officially begin. Today, I want to take you to that rental store to talk about a few games that I remember briefly playing as a child. Games that never made any top 10 lists. Games forgotten by time, possibly for good reasons. Games that left a particular impression on a young Zarah for some reason or another, and I wanted to take a look back to see what that reason may have been. I'm sure these are all going to be quality games that are entirely worth my time. Let's start things off with a classic. A game in which you have to guide a series of tiny men with no survival instincts through a series of obstacles by directing them in different ways to reach a specific goal. You might have even heard of it before. Yeah, that's right. You know it. You love it. It's Troddlers. Okay, full disclosure. Troddlers was released for the Amiga in 1992 first, but was ported to MS-DOS and the SNES a year later. To my soft child brain, I had no idea that this was a port. They were all just SNES games to me. This version has the better soundtrack anyway. Yeah, that's right, I said it. Fight me. The Troddlers storyline is presented entirely within the instruction manual, in both text and illustrated form. In an attempt to cut the corners on their chores, two wizard apprentices named Hocus and Pocus, get it, hatch a plan to unleash a swarm of Troddlers to do all the hard work for them. Things don't go as planned, and now the Troddlers are loose in the world, where they will slowly cover the entire planet and devour everything until nothing but a husk of a world remains. I might have made some of that up. Anyway, Hocus and Pocus have been tasked to round up all the little guys and put them back into containment like a rogue SCP. That is where you come in. The gameplay is pretty simple. Each level has different objectives that it clearly lays out on a starting screen. Once you begin, you analyze the level, figure out what needs to be done, and come up with a plan. The first handful of puzzles are pretty chill, but you better hang on to your butts, because it doesn't take long before you and your Troddlers get thrown to the wolves. Some levels give you mere seconds to react before things start going sideways, so you better be thinking on your feet. Other levels have very specific solutions, and if you do anything, and I mean anything, out of order, then whoopsie-toodle, you lose. Some of the later levels are particular head-scratchers, which stumped me entirely until I was forced to look up the solutions and immediately felt like an idiot. Except this level. F*** this level. Like the timer counting down, the Troddlers always keep moving. They can walk on floors, walls, ceilings, and will always follow whatever path they are set on, even if that path includes obstacles that will kill them. Survival instincts are not in these guys' wheelhouse. It's your job to direct them to one or more exit doors by summoning or de-summoning magic blocks to change the path they take. Despite wearing its Lemmings-like inspiration on its sleeve, Troddlers is actually a very different game. Rather than being an omniscient god, commanding tiny beings to do your bidding, you actually have no direct control over them. Instead, you're in the trenches, man. You're right down there with them. These little guys are crawling all over you, and you need to figure out how you're going to get them from point A to point B without dropping them to their deaths, feeding them to shredders, blowing them up, or telefragging them. Troddling ain't easy. Unlike the Troddlers, you are a slave to gravity and often have to use your magic blocks as stepping stones to navigate the stages. Sometimes the Troddlers themselves aren't even in the level, and it's purely a platforming challenge to collect gems. And as if that wasn't bad enough, sometimes you have to make the gems yourself. Green gems can only be created by dropping a boulder onto another boulder, but if you drop a boulder onto obstacles like birds, fire, or spinners, it creates blue gems. Furthermore, red gems are what you get when you drop boulders onto zombie Troddlers. Oh right, there are also zombie Troddlers. These guys behave the same way as normal Troddlers, and most of the time you are not only allowed, but encouraged to indiscriminately end their collective existences. If they touch you, they can drain your health, but not always. And if they come in contact with any regular Troddlers, they immediately collapse into a singularity, tearing apart the fabric of space-time for the briefest of nanoseconds, opening a black hole that stares into the very depths of your soul before it vanishes, shredding both Troddlers into particles of dust, immediately forgotten by our cold, uncaring universe. They also have cute little pointy teeth. The game supports the elusive SNES mouse, and while I think it probably plays better with a mouse cursor, I still managed to beat it without one. In fact, this was the first time I actually saw the ending. As a kid, I don't think I ever managed to get past the first 30 levels. So, why is this so memorable for me? I mean, it is a solid puzzle game with really distinct mechanics, so it's not hard for it to carve out a little corner of my brain. The part that is really burned in there, however, is the music. I mean, the soundtrack just rips. The SNES sound chip took the music from the Amiga version and made it into pure magic. Yes, the soundtrack is only like 10 songs, but every single one of them is a certified banger. So that's Troddlers, a pretty decent little puzzle platformer that certainly wasn't going to change the world, but it had a pretty good soundtrack. But we're just getting started here, and I think the real question is, can we do better? The answer is no, but we can do grosser. Back in the 80s and 90s, there was this phenomenon of gross out media. The Garbage Pail Kids, Toxic Crusaders, even Ren and Stimpy, stuff like that.
Don't you know cartoons will ruin your mind?
If it was disgusting, it was cool. The grosser, the better.
Look at this nasty guy!
I'm sure there's some academic reason as to why this kind of stuff appealed to kids, but I'm gonna stick to I don't really know and set myself up to talk about our next game. Boogerman. Excellent start. Boogerman is a 2D platformer developed by Interplay, released for the Sega Genesis in 1994, and ported to the SNES in 1995. I don't really know why I keep talking about ports, but that's also not really important. So, moving on. Despite being a gross-out game very much on purpose, the game actually looks pretty good. The animations are all hand-drawn and positively dripping with life, among other things. The story is... well, here is a brief segment from the instruction manual. It was a dark and stormy night at the strange new science lab built high in the hills above Takey Dump, the world's largest landfill. Other than this unusual storm, all was well in the world. This was not the case just a short time ago. The world had come dangerously close to being buried in its own garbage and pollution. All was saved when local mad scientist Professor Stinkbomb invented a device that could transexist the world's pollution to another dimension, a dimension that had come to be known as Dimension Excrement. Everything was running well and there had been no complaints. That is, until now. There are 3 more paragraphs of this, by the way. It is the thinnest of veneers used for injecting as many puns as possible into an already pun-stuffed game. It's also surprisingly layered. Hear me out. Boogerman, or should I say the eccentric millionaire Snotty Ragsdale, gets hired as a janitor to keep an eye on this new cutting-edge technology and happens to be in the right place at the right time when the rare element powering this machine, Snotrium-357, gets stolen and sucked into Dimension Excrement, where it could be used for evil purposes. None of this matters. The story doesn't matter. And yet, they wrote all this. If there is one thing about Boogerman that stands out, it is that you can absolutely tell that this was someone's passion project. Specifically, Michael Strachey and Chris Tremmel. In an interview with Chris, he described how Interplay approached them to make a game to appeal to the garbage pail kids demographic.
Conceptually, we knew we wanted to make a gross game. Mike came up with the idea of a gross superhero, and off we went. The ideas just started pouring out from Michael and myself.
Ew.
I would say we were never short of ideas for characters, locations, etc.
There are 5 stages with multiple levels filled to the brim with as much snot as they possibly can be. They are just as colorful as the various sprites, particularly the final set of levels, which have you navigating through the dreaded Boogermeister's palace, defeating his minions and trying so very hard to ignore the absolutely wretched self-portraits he has mounted on his walls.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
As for the game, it's fine. Boogerman himself has a wide variety of abilities, including flinging boogers, hawking loogies, burping, and farting. Oh, I'm sorry, furting. We gotta have at least a little class around here. Boogers get upgraded to loogies when you collect milk, though both require a supply of replenishable mucus to use. Likewise, burps and furts have a separate gas meter, which makes it seem like you should be switching up your attacks to manage your disgusting resources. But honestly, I never ran out of mucus the entire time I played, and I barely ever found the gas attacks to be any better than a simple booger flick. Other than disrespect, of course. There is also a dedicated catchphrase button, which I think needs to be in every video game.
Booger! Booger!
The platforming is perfectly functional, but not without its issues. First of all, your field of view is way too small. The levels are not confusing, but it's really hard to get a big picture when you can barely see 10 feet in front of you. Enemies have a habit of popping in at the edges of the screen and hitting you before you can react. Still, most of them die in a single hit, and health pickups are numerous enough that it's really just a minor annoyance. I definitely died from slippery platforming and floaty jumps more than any bad guys. Speaking of bad guys, we need to talk about the boss fights. In a game full of mediocre platforming, the boss fights are honestly also pretty mediocre, actually. The characters themselves have fun designs like Hick Boy, Revolta, and Deodor Ant, but all of them have basically the same strategy. Dodge an attack or two, pick and flick a booger, dodge them as they charge across the screen, repeat until dead. Even the final boss, the game's greatest challenge, Boogermeister himself, has the exact same pattern. Also, while we're on the subject, look at the insane animations on these guys. Some of them are so over the top that it's actually kind of hard to tell where their ridiculous hitboxes start and stop. And while their attacks are often predictable, sometimes they just aren't. You don't get punished a whole lot for failing, though. Extra lives may be sparse, and I still don't really know how the after-level bonus works. But passwords are simple combinations of 3 different sprites, which are pretty easy to remember. I actually completed this game all by my lonesome back when I was too young and stupid to know what I was doing. There is a special kind of satisfaction for beating pretty much any game, but especially games from back then. Sure, if I had enough time to bash my head against a brick wall, I'm sure I could have beaten just about anything, but I only had these games for a couple days at a time. I had to act fast. Or be good. Or the game just had to be easy, which leads me to the reason why Boogerman has stuck in my brain for so long. I accomplished something, even if it was pretty simple.
Booger!
When all is mopped up, Boogerman is a fine game. It's really not worth writing home about, but it exists in a special place in some people's hearts, including my own. In 2013, Chris and Michael, both of the original creators, announced a Kickstarter for an HD sequel. but it only raised a little more than $40,000 out of the $375 that they were asking for. There hasn't really been any further Boogerman news since then, so I think it's pretty safe to assume that the project has been quietly cancelled. And honestly, I think that's kind of sad. Like, creatively speaking, Boogerman is weird. But we need more of that weirdness, especially with the prevalence of indie gaming. People need to just follow their passions and create things that they want to create. Could Boogerman exist today? Absolutely. Should Boogerman exist today? At first, I wasn't sure, but the more I've thought about it, hell yeah, he should. He's the kind of mythological hero that we can use to tell grand stories. Stories that will be remembered and passed down generation to generation. Speaking of which, do you remember when Clive Owen was King Arthur? Yeah, me neither, but I do remember that movie being criticized for having very little to do with the Arthurian legends. I mean, there's no Holy Grail, there's no Lady of the Lake, Guinevere is almost a completely different person altogether, but most importantly, the knights are former Roman soldiers instead of their traditional depiction. Football players sent back in time by Merlin to rescue the real Knights of the Round Table. King Arthur and the Knights of Justice was a 1992 cartoon series in which Gary Chalk and Scott McNeil voiced half of the entire cast by themselves. The series ran for 2 seasons and was not very good. It's about what you would expect from an early 90s Saturday morning cartoon that looks like it was made entirely to sell toys.
What you doing out here with all this ass? Double cheeked up on a Thursday afternoon.
Admittedly, I don't really know if that's why this show was made, but it's really the vibe that I got from watching the first few episodes. And believe me, I am no stranger to those kinds of shows. I will talk about this at some point.
Sorry, ain't ringing any bells.
Anyway, I'm not really here to talk about the cartoon because a couple years after the show was cancelled, Manley and Associates, I don't know who they are either, made a game based on it in 1995. It was published by Enix. Yes, that Enix. And you might think that that would bode well for an RPG like Knights of Justice. You might think that. But you might also be wrong. You take on the role of King Arthur. Arthur King. The game provides essentially no context for anything out of the gate, so I hope you're up to snuff on your Knights of Justice lore.
Well, some shortcut. Where are we anyway? And how do we get these clothes?
To be fair, there is a cutscene that gives a quick rundown of the story, but it only plays if you idle too long on the main menu. If you just jump into the game like an eager child would, you would never see this. Once the game itself starts, Merlin pops up, dumps exposition on you for a few minutes, then poofs away, leaving you to aimlessly wander the halls of Camelot. If you try to leave, Merlin scolds you to gather your party before venturing forth, so let's hit up that round table. You can choose from such legendary knights as Sir Lancelot, Sir Gallop, Darren, Brick, and Uncle Phil? Each knight has different stats, though I honestly can't tell you if that makes any difference in gameplay. They mostly just wander around you and randomly attack enemies that you come across. Except for the times when they just stand still and do nothing while they watch you struggle. They also block your movement, so God help you if you need to backtrack in a tight space. The main thing we need them for is collecting items. See, each knight has a key somewhere in the world that belongs only to them. There's a little slot in their inventory, see? Put a pin in this, because we'll come back to it. For now, let's grab any couple of bros and hit the road. Merlin sends us to collect the sword Excalibur from the Lady of the Lake. But first, we gotta find said lake, which illustrates one of the many major problems with this game: navigation. So much of the game's world is just a bland forest with no major landmarks or signposts, or really much of anything at all. It's incredibly easy to get lost unless you know what you're looking for. Every time you come across a point of interest, you better remember how you got there, or you'll be wandering all over the damn place trying to find it again. There is a world map, but it barely corresponds to anything that you can walk around on, so it is never worth the time opening it up to look at it. Get used to this, because this is one of the many exercises in frustration that this game is going to thrust upon you. After heading northwest of Camelot, not that northwest, this northwest, you'll find the Lady of the Lake. She is watching over the mythical sword Excalibur, but she can't give it to you until you retrieve Arthur's shield first. For some reason.
I'm getting a headache just trying to figure out what this guy means.
So we have to climb a mountain and fight a dragon to get it. Okay, fine, let's go do that. But whoops, we can't climb the mountain because there's some magical fire blocking the entrance. If you hoof it back to Camelot and talk to Merlin, he'll tell you he has a potion you can use to protect yourself from the fire and pass through the flames. But he needs you to collect the ingredients first, and if all of this sounds tedious as hell, it's because it absolutely 100% is. King Arthur and the Knights of Justice has one trick up its sleeve, and that trick is fetch quests. You are going to spend so much time wandering around looking for items with barely any direction on where to actually find them. The ingredients that Merlin needs are scattered across the forest, so you have to scour every screen we have access to until you manage to wrangle them up. Once Merlin gives you the potion of fire immunity, you're ready to fight a dragon, right? Nope. I mean, sure, you can climb the mountain and face the dragon, no problem, but with your pathetic attacks, you don't stand a chance. That dragon is gonna eat you for breakfast. Which highlights yet another problem that this game has. Not telling you shit. While you were scouring the forest, you may have come across this shield in a secret forest clearing. You might not have come across it either. It's honestly kind of hard to find unless you know where to look, and no one actively sends you to find this. Anyway, it turns out that this is Breeze's shield. Each knight has their own shield that, when collected, allows them to use a special attack. Once you have collected his shield, make sure Breeze is in your party, then head up to face the dragon. This time, Breeze volunteers to fight him alone, and with his new shield ability, you can finally defeat the dragon. I mean, it's still not easy, mind you. It's very possible to die. How are you actually supposed to know any of this without a walkthrough? I genuinely have no idea. Maybe Merlin gives you hints, but I couldn't be bothered to take the trip back to Camelot after accomplishing every minor thing, so I really don't know. Anyway, with the dragon dead, Arthur grabs his shield, and now we can finally get Excalibur from the Lady of the Lake. She makes you do a hidden path puzzle, which is surprisingly forgiving given the rest of this game's bullshit, and then you collect your legendary sword. What does it do? From what I can tell, absolutely nothing. What? You thought there would be some kind of reward for collecting one of the most legendary artifacts in human history? Progress. Progress is your reward. Speaking of your sword, I'd like to take a brief moment to talk about the game's combat. It's bad. It's an action-adventure game, so obviously the combat has to be pretty important. It is also completely incomprehensible. Every time you swing your sword, you only hit with full strength if your stamina bar is full. You can keep swinging as fast as you want, but it does less damage. At least I think it does? There's no penalty for just swinging like the dickens either, since it stun locks enemies in place. If you do care about stamina, then the game uses a mechanic from Sekiro's book more than 20 years earlier, in that you restore stamina slightly faster when blocking. And you even have two different blocks, one for high attacks and one for low attacks. Which attacks are considered high or low? Well, after playing this game for several hours, I can confidently say that I have no goddamn idea. There is almost no feedback on whether enemies are being hit by your attacks or when they are hitting you. Sometimes enemies drop dead immediately after being hit, and other times they take a few steps before crumpling. Herbs can be used to heal as a consumable item, but the amount they heal is random, and oh yeah, you can't use them in combat either. Every time you use a shield attack, it expends a charge from your inventory. Those charges can only be collected in specific locations where they spawn inconsistently, I might add, and will have to be farmed by moving between screens over and over again to collect them. I mean, you don't have to do this, but the walkthrough I was using says that it is basically necessary. In fact, I had to grind these items twice in my brief playthrough because I didn't get enough the first time and ran out of shield attacks during a boss fight. If you die, there isn't a game over or a checkpoint or anything like that. It just sends you back to Camelot to walk all the way back and do whatever you were in the middle of over again. The only merciful thing about the game is that it doesn't remove any items from you if you die. Unless, that is, you decide to turn the console off and come back later because there is no save system. Yeah, that's right. Your progress is only tracked by passwords, so you always start a fresh play session with the same amount of consumable items, even if you grinded them up to 99 before quitting. And Lord help you if you forgot to write down your password, because that means you're starting all the way from the beginning again. Even with save states, this game is incredibly annoying at best. Without them, it is heinous, a crime against the very concept of fun. Okay, with all that in mind, let's get back to where we were. Nearby, there is a castle that has a key in it. We need that key. Whose key is it? Well, Merlin drops a cheeky little hint. It's Breeze. It's Breeze. After doing a couple of stupid fetch quests, again, to gain access to the keep, you can make your way through it with very little difficulty. Once again, Breeze takes point at the end and fights the boss alone. If you can avoid the boss's instant kill attack and succeed, it drops a key which Breeze quickly picks up. Thanks for all the help, Breeze. We'll never see you again. And that's pretty much the rest of the game. Do a handful of fetch quests to activate the next progression flag, gain access to the next evil castle, defeat boss, collect key, which all sounds pretty straightforward, but be damned if any of it feels rewarding in the slightest. It's also just horribly unintuitive. For example, the next castle holds Gallop's key, so naturally we would want to bring him along, right? Wrong. Remember how Breeze volunteered himself as tribute to fight the boss alone? Well, that happens in Gallop's case as well, but we're still missing Gallop's shield, meaning he has no ranged attack, making the boss fight almost impossible. So no, we don't actually want Gallop here. Instead, Arthur fights the boss, uses the power of his 9mm to defeat him, and just like that, ta-da! It's Gallop's key. There's just one big problem. This is Gallop's key. When they say this is Gallop's key, it means only Gallop can touch it. And since we didn't bring Gallop along with us, that means we have to backtrack all the way to Camelot, put Gallop in our party, travel back through the wilderness, back into the keep, through the maze, into the boss arena, so Gallop can pick up his key. This is not the last time you will need to do this, by the way. Why did I like this game? When I decided to revisit it, I was excited. I wanted to like it. I really did, but it just sucks. I'm pretty sure that when I was a kid, I never made it past the first few screens of the forest because I didn't understand how to actually do anything. I don't really remember watching the cartoon either. What spell did this game put on me as a child that it has remained in my subconscious for so long? What did you do to me, Merlin? Tell me, you purple-robed son of a... Is it possible that I simply got Knights of Justice mixed up with a good game, like the Capcom beat-em-up Knights of the Round? Yes. Yes, I did. Well, I refuse to let the game win. I could finish playing it, but I really don't want to. I may never see the ending of this game, or the true ending of the Arthur-verse. But as far as I'm concerned, there is no conclusion in the world that is worth this kind of torture.
What the hell am I looking at?
Unless you know you're into that kind of thing. But even if you are, man, you can do better. I'm putting this one back on the shelf. And burying it. So what did we learn from this brief trip down memory lane? Well, I learned that my own childhood nostalgia ranges from pretty much what I remember to being a complete and utter lie. We also learned that while the SNES has a lot of really fondly remembered games, its extended library can be pretty hit or miss. Honestly, there are so many more half-remembered games from my childhood that I could have talked about. Like this one, where you have to escape a sinking ocean liner. Uncharted only wishes it could be as cool as this. And I could go on. But, considering this was supposed to be a shorter, easier video to make than the last one, if I take any longer to finish this script, I will shrivel up and die. Anyway, I gotta clean this up. I'll see you later. Hey, post-Project Zarah here, back again to remind you to like, comment, subscribe, and all that. But most of all, just thanks for watching. The RTS video was received very well, and that really motivated me to keep going, and despite being much later than I wanted to, here we are. I've also updated my Patreon, so for as low as $2 a month, you can support me and get access to the ad-free versions of my videos, as well as early access when it happens. I'd like to post some more stuff there as well, like behind the scenes and some like Q&A responses, stuff like that. So if you do have questions, please ask in the comments or DM me or find some other way of getting in contact with me. I think that kind of thing would be a lot of fun.